What's up, everybody? Welcome to Puzzle Huddle with Experts. We have another fantastic guest. My name is Matthew Goins. We have Dr. Danielle Haney. She's a PhD scientist, and we can't wait to learn from her all about her childhood, her interest in STEM, her career trajectory, and how we can kind of replicate some of the things from her upbringing so that we can maybe create a pipeline for young doctors and create a bigger pool and a more powerful force in terms of the Black doctor community, the Black science community. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
If you could unpack what your PhD is, if you could explain it in terms of common people, grocery store terms,
Sure.
How would you explain your PhD?
Yes, my PhD is in immunology. And as you know, everyone has an immune system. And so ology is a study of, so it's a study of the immune system. In particular, I was really trying to understand how our body cells respond to viruses, and the model virus that I used was HIV. And I looked at HIV disease progression in adolescents. So that means I wanted to understand what effect did it have on cells in the body that were supposed to be fighting off infection. And I chose adolescents as that was a population that would likely be living with the disease for a longer period of time. So that meant we need to understand what was going on early so that we could really think about ways to assist as they grew older. And it really helps to understand how the immune system works.
Well, I'm going to take a U-turn right now in terms of the questions I have planned. So what are some typical ways? Wow, this is such a pointed area of interest. Yeah. What were the ways when you were doing your research? What are some of the ways that an adolescent might have contracted HIV?
Yeah, so they, depending on the circumstances they may have grown up with, right? Drug use, may have been born to a mother that had HIV. They may have engaged in certain sexual behaviors. During my time in grad school, I did a lot of work with cells. And so I really want to understand what would happen, what may cause this to happen in a young person's life. And I had an opportunity to do like a short rotation at the Health Disparity Center on Penn's campus in their nursing school, and really got a chance to be involved in focus groups that talk to young African-American women about condom negotiation in abusive relationships. So there's an entire world out there that kids are navigating and really trying to understand not only how to protect themselves from diseases, or really to protect themselves from certain abusive relationships just based on where they may have grown up. So yeah.
All right, so this is a very fascinating and profound space for research. Well, I'm glad that occurred to you so what took you to that place in terms of your research interest out of all the things that were, in the whole wide world of things to study? Well, why was it that?
Why was it HIV?
Yes.
I think in general, there are two big things I wanted to study. It was either going to be cancer immunology. How do we use the immune system to kill cancer cells? Or really, how do we affect something? How do I make an impact on something that I know is affecting the community and at that time, clearly an entire continent? The research was rich at that time, and my advisor had a great deal of experience in that area, and it just made sense. There was a new technology in that space that could help answer the questions that I had. And it was just very interesting to me. HIV is I hate to say it, it is an interesting virus to study, but you can get truly sidetracked in forgetting that it impacts a large group of people if you don't come with that thought process of how can I ultimately be sure that my community will be okay? How can I make sure there's education? How can I learn more about this virus to one day, possibly make an impact in other ways or help people make better decisions, critical decisions for their life process?
As we were going through the recent public health crisis, I couldn't help but think we are likely inspiring some new young scientists because the same way we experienced HIV and AIDS through the 80s and 90s, and it's just that new awareness. There are kids today that all they know is coronavirus, and that will inform some of their career decisions and their scientific interests. So taking me back to your childhood, what were some of your favorite toys when you were a kid?
Some of my favorite toys, I think I was a I was a semi-only child, so I played by myself a lot. So I would mix things together and see if something would grow. That's like one thing I would do. I'd go into the kitchen. I read this book, Harriet the Spy, at one point and watched the movie, and my stepfather saw that interest and he gave me binoculars. So I would use those binoculars to observe everything, whether that be like going outside, looking at the dirt, playing with things in that way, or really just like looking outside and observing the world around me. And I just had so many questions. My mother was a medical laboratory technician. So when I went to work with her every now and then, she's like, do you want to see these samples? And I think that really, really helped spur a continued interest in science for me just at home. So, yeah.
What, if any, other hobbies and activities did you have as a kid? Were you just a student, or did your parents or your guardianship, did they have you enrolled in different kinds of developmental activities?
Yeah, so I did have different developmental activities, but in all honesty, it was almost like out of luck. So sometime in the 5th or 6th grade, I was in a gifted program, and they took us to Louisiana Arts and Science Center that had like a NASA demonstration where you pretend like you were in mission control for like a whole week and really understand astronauts. They really worked that into the curriculum. We also had this time where for one summer, for 1 week in our small town, Zachary, Louisiana, they sponsored like a science camp for 1 week for kids and got an opportunity to hone skills there and then be a counselor the next year. I was blessed to have parents who could pay for a summer trip between, my junior year in high school and senior year, where I spent 2 weeks in Houston, Texas, at Baylor College of Medicine in Rice, doing this National Youth Leadership Forum on medicine. So where I interacted with people that want to be medical doctors and things of that nature, because that was at one point my dream. So I had a very great opportunity to be exposed in science pretty much throughout my upbringing.
Yeah, and take me back to these binoculars and going outside. What things were you accompanied by a chaperone? Were you by yourself, or what?
I was by myself.
You were going to explore things that were outside?
Yeah, I just want to see things that were outside, whether that be like, and I think whether that be how the ants are moving, what's really out here. There was a spider that would come to like a certain part of our house all the time. I would look at that, although I was terrified of spiders, just trying to understand different patterns. I would draw it. I would watch people. I would try to understand like what's going on with people too. Like, I think what we underestimate is seeing where your child is curious about anything. That's science. Science is asking questions about the world around you. That is the first step. And once you see that, like, that's a scientist. The first step in the scientific process is observation, right? You see something, now I have to make a hypothesis about it. Now I want to test it, right? So like that is something that I would say, like, early on, the inquisitive nature of children is that of a scientist.
All right, and you mentioned to me an email, but you have had the opportunity to sponsor or help develop or formulate a science camp for kids. What are some of you already kind of headed down that commentary path, but what are some things that you've implemented at your camp, or that are important for camps in general that are trying to stimulate the interest of kids in science?
Yeah, honestly, meeting them where they are and making it easy for the kids to engage. And for me, what was important was to make sure they were seeing, because I was working with students of, elementary students of color, making sure they see scientists of color. That wasn't, that's not something that I was able to be exposed to. So got together a group of grad students and postdocs who were of color, worked with my laboratory manager, who now runs the program. And we really had experiments that lined up to the curriculum as best as possible. And we made sure to bring in the world around them. Like when they come in for the day, it's like, okay, what happened outside today? Or what's going on with the weather? And that would introduce a weather unit. So that means we were doing weather today. Or what'd you guys notice about the dirt today? Or what'd you notice about this? Or, those types of things. So, and that will relate to the lesson of the day. And then they hands-on was like the most important thing for them to be able to touch the science, to touch the work. That's what science is, playing around with the world around you and asking questions. And that was that was something that was paramount in how we designed the experiments each week.
Yeah, are you able to do a lot of mentorship and coaching for younger scientists in your current career space?
That's a good question. I would like to do a bit more. I think there's something to be said about how to do that formally and informally. I have a lot of individuals who will reach out, and I love to give information interviews. People understand like what are the steps in the career path. I've done some informal mentoring with some of the kids at Hopkins before. And I look forward to doing more of that. I do have a few mentees, but I definitely would like to do more of that right now. I think I'm in a space where I want to give back a bit more.
Yeah, when we have a PhD in our social or family network, I imagine you get called for certain specific things. Like,
Yes.
okay, we don't know, we don't understand this. Well, we can call Dr. Haney. She'll know more than us.
Yeah.
What kind of things do your friends and family members call you for because of your expertise?
Well, they call me for things from as small as blood pressure numbers, which I've had told them I'm not a medically trained doctor, although I have worked in heart disease awareness and I can give you like the public health facts, to like during coronavirus, like want to know about the vaccine, want to know like, should they take it, want to know immunology of viruses. And my friend is a virologist. Her PhD is in virology, and we had an opportunity. She was able to pull me in on some of the things she was doing. We actually had a conversation with our church about coronavirus. We read the papers and were able to translate it in a way that made sense for people. And that's something that we really enjoy doing. So it ranges, but oftentimes it's about stuff that is like, I don't know anything about.
Yeah, if we have a PhD immunologist in our network, we calling you all through this pandemic. There's no way you're going to avoid all of our calls.
I didn't.
Okay, outside of the science things, what other profound memories do you have from childhood? Were there any other things that you think really contributed to your progression and success, just in science, but in life? What were some things that kind of help you be determined and self-confident and move forward?
A support system. I think I had a great support system in the family, my community, like really cheering me on. I had excellent friends. I think that's really a part of it. People telling you what you can do, people seeing your greatness, people congratulating you, even though sometimes attention can make us uncomfortable. But I think that was a very big portion, was the community around me that really helped me stay focused on the path. And also thinking, well, if I can continue to broaden my horizons, then I'll be able to give back. And I think that was always instilled in me, that you need to give back in some way.
All right, I'm going to move forward to your current professional work. But before we go there, immunology, what should we all be doing as a community to help make sure our immune system as strong and vibrant as it could be through all the macro experiences?
Yeah. So I say keeping your immune system as strong as almost like anything else: diet, exercise, and sleep. Making sure that you go to your doctor's appointments and that you're paying attention to what they tell you to do. That's pretty much it. It's very simple. And everything else we can't necessarily plan for, like the severe autoimmune diseases or the cancers that may grow. But if you stay up to date on things, and you'll be able to discover things earlier, and that's kind of what we really want prevention first, and then early discovery, and really staying on top of things, which is kind of atypical in our community, is something that really could help.
All right, and I understand that you're not currently doing research anymore, but what is your current professional role in terms of the work that you do?
Yeah, sure. So right now, I have had several roles post getting my PhD, and right now I work at a pharmaceutical company as a patient advocacy, the U.S. lead for patient advocacy in ophthalmology and respiratory, and really that in short, that really means that I make sure the patient voice is infused from the early development stages of the science all the way to the marketing stages of our drug production. And so I work with advocacy groups. These are large or small nonprofit organizations. They can range from the size of the American Diabetes Association to a 10-person group that has a great deal of power and support networks. And what we do is we make sure that they represent the patient voice. They understand what the patient needs are based on the specific disease area. And then I almost do a kind of matching within our company. And I say, well, our asthma development team is really looking to make sure the protocol is suited for patients. I make sure that whenever I think about that, I think about diversity within the entire process, that, well, we need to make sure that we include patients of all colors, patients from different areas in the country, to really talk about, if this protocol will work. So from there all the way to somebody possibly helping out on deciding where we should go next in the science, or how we should speak to individuals about the drugs that we are making. And on the other end, I get a chance to really hear what the patient community needs and provide funding where possible for them to do what's best for their own communities without any influence from the pharmaceutical company.
Yeah, when you said respiratory, my brain, in my limited academic development, I went right to lung cancer.
Okay.
But what are some other common diagnoses that you have identified that you end up providing advocacy for? Asthma is just, I'm sure there's quite a bit of asthma in the world. But what are the other conditions that you represent?
Yeah. So asthma, pulmonary fibrosis, and so I used to represent scleroderma, flu, and COPD as well. So
okay.
Yeah, so there are several different.
The only reason I know COPD is because I know there's a medication that plays, there's a commercial that has to be for it, because I've heard that a lot.
I hear it so much. Well, I always feel like every treatment, they're always saying, if you have asthma or COPD, check your doctor. Like, that's always the warning at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I hear it on the treadmill even. So, because I hear COPD quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right.
It could also be COVID-19, to be honest, but we just don't have COVID-19 like that. I don't have COVID-19 in my portfolio, but one of my colleagues works with COVID-19. So
okay, because that likely that a whole person that's not something you want to spread out. A person needs to own that.
Yeah.
All right, a PhD is a pretty extreme level of education to pursue to resolve some kind of interest. Well, why was the PhD important for you to pursue?
For me, it was all about the knowledge. I really wanted to understand, contribute to the new knowledge of science, is what they always say, and really delve into what immunology is, how the body works, get an opportunity to test that. And honestly, it was probably one of the best decisions of my life, because what I know now is that a PhD is a degree in problem solving. So that means that by the end of everything, you can figure out how to write a large book, you can figure out how to do an experiment based on situations, but you can also do so much that's going to apply to your career moving forward. You could choose to go into academia or research, or you can do a more non-traditional path like myself and have an opportunity to contribute in ways that, or you thought were unimaginable, where that be like helping a client come up with a scientific communication strategy for their drug product, developing long-term scientific programming, or thinking about scientific priority setting, to also think about how do we make sure that scientists like ourselves don't forget how to communicate to the patient community, and make sure that when they develop when they're developing their grants or their research, they don't forget about the end user or the end customer, which is the patient. Like, does the person that's battling this disease care that you're studying this? Maybe we should really be thinking about that, understanding the amount of funds that go into the scientific enterprise. Yes, there are sometimes science for the sake of science, for the increase of knowledge, but there are times when the science is really to make sure that we're improving health outcomes for individuals. And that is really what I love the focus of.
It's really practical. Looking at what you study for your PhD, like, this is really life application. This isn't just some journal article for the sake of journal articles. This is, no, we got to go solve a problem.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
How early in your life did you decide? You mentioned some early interest in science and playing with scientific devices and tools, but that does not necessarily set you on the career track to be a scientist, or to make a decision to professionally to pursue science. What was going on that you decided, this I want to earn a living, and this is what I want to do with my life?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. I can't like pinpoint the moment, but every time I was in science class, I enjoyed myself. Like whether that was physics or biology, I just really had a great time and it came easy to me. So it was like, so why not? And I knew that like if I were going into medicine or a research scientist, that my job would be secure. I knew that there was going to be something to do when I graduated. And it was the summer of my junior year in college where the decision was made to do the PhD and not the MD. I'd done the summer programs with going to the pre-medical programs and being in the office with the doctor, seeing the surgeries, getting a chance to do some real hands-on work. And I was like, I don't know if I would want to do this every day. I really want to know how they knew about this. How do we prevent it from we're cutting out the cancer? How did they get to shrink the cancer enough? Like I had more questions. I had more questions that I wanted answered. And I felt the PhD was probably the best fit for me after doing research for a few years in undergrad.
Yeah. How have you been able to get your PhD research out into the hands of the people that do the work? Because as a PhD, as a researcher, that does not necessarily make you the connection to the consumer or the patient so how does this information become action in terms of the systems that impact or influence patients?
I mean, that's a very good question. I think that is still a big question for the overall scientific enterprise. I don't necessarily think we do that well. I think that COVID-19 also showed us that we have to get much better at communicating the science, the overall scientific process. And I know there are a lot of ways that people are trying to do that. For myself, I mean, the general pathway is to publish your work. I think what we have seen with the advent of technology is sometimes you could just turn on the camera or create some Instagram reels and really talk about your science in a quick snapshot. So I believe there are ways that are developing now for people to be better scientific communicators to get their information to the public. So yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully, ideally, I'll have a lot of parents watching this video, potential patients or people that have interest in other advocacy opportunities. What should we all be thinking about just in case we have an adolescent that may have been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS through some circumstance? What are some important things to think about for that patient and how we can help them and provide as good of an outcome as possible in those situations?
My main thing is I'm always going to go back to working hand in hand with their care team, their primary care team and things of that nature. If clinical trials are an option, look those up and ask as many questions as possible, because that can always be a route for them to find ways to either cure or reduce their symptoms. I think it is incredibly important for everyone to get as educated, like in the home and the care team, to become as educated as possible. And also, like, let's not forget about, there's still a stigma in the mental health impact of everything and how that should be considered in the overall care as well.
Yeah, I imagine the same way COVID introduced potentially some embarrassment to how a person contracted it. In a so much more probably severe way if a person has an HIV or AIDS diagnosis.
Yeah.
Depression, shame, embarrassment, and that's going to affect your health outcomes. How do we help young people think about that diagnosis and do the best they can with some of the mental health experiences that they'll likely go through?
So I think one of the things that we keep in mind is that HIV has been around almost over 30 years now. And because of that, there's so much funding and support for individuals that have HIV. I think the harder part is how do we make sure we connect those who have the need to the services that are already available. And some of that can be looking up advocacy groups that may be specific for individuals who have contracted the virus, specific for adolescents who may have chronic illnesses, specific for individuals who are dealing with stigma of a chronic health condition. Those kind of groups exist. And And those groups are very helpful at assisting individuals and their families throughout the process. Really working once again with your care team and determine what resources your care center might have. I think those are excellent opportunities for individuals to educate themselves on ways they can help individuals who may have contracted the virus.
Yeah, and hopefully now with the medications and the treatment now, all these patients are planning to have long, awesome lives,
Yes.
and they're not looking
No longer a
at.
death sentence. Yeah.
Yeah, like you're gonna thrive. You're gonna do amazing things. We just need to put the solutions in place and get you on track to be great.
Yeah.
This has been so amazing for me. Thank you for spending time with me. I want to invite the audience to please like this video, subscribe to our Puzzle Huddle YouTube channel so you can see the rest of our videos. Dr. Haney, thank you for your excellence, for your
Thank you for having me.
yeah, for your research interests, and if there's anything the community can do to help, release your passion into the world. I'm so glad that we found you, and hopefully we'll continue to be able to connect and enable the work that you're doing and be more helpful to the community.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Mhm.